Hello, this is Daedalus for Nerds and Stuff, and today we'll be taking this bloody Buccaneer Skarre model from box to beautiful. Let's get started. So this particular model is one of the con exclusive models that Privateer Press comes out with. They only sell it at their booth in the conventions or online in their web store during that time. And so I had a friend that went to Gen Con a couple weeks ago, and he ninja'd for me, picked up this model, and so we're just going to get to it. So we're just kind of separating out what we've got, removing some of the extra metal pieces, those little like sprue parts and kind of mold fragments that are left over from the casting. Just kind of separating it all out, looking at what I've got, seeing how it might go together. I definitely wasn't expecting this model to be in this many pieces. I was expecting about, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4. Her is one piece, the barrels, and maybe her arms or something. I was definitely not expecting 8. But this was a really good mold. It was clean, not very many mold lines. You know, they took great effort into making a good piece. They've even got special indentations for stuff to fit naturally, like the back, kind of her back hips against the wood barrels. They've got perfect ingrained lines so you can lean it right up against the barrel and get good tight fits. They've even removed some of the rivets on the barrels so that it'll fit tighter in the areas where she's supposed to lean. So I'm just doing some test fitting with some blue tack so I can see how it's going to look, how it's going to stand, and how I might have to deal with some posing. Just, plugging all the pieces, seeing where they fit, seeing if I have to pin anything or if there are going to be any issues I'll have to fix with green stuff. All in all, it looks pretty good. So I just kind of put some of the extra pieces aside and just did a test fit on the base. But this base is an issue. You know, most models come with a little bit of a insert to put in that gap to hold it in place, and hers does not. So instead of just painting a wood floor on or something, I just decided to make one so that I could cover up that wood gap and kind of have a uniform looking floor. That, and I just like to make bases. So I'm just taking my clippers, just a pair of wire cutters, and cutting out some wood planks, basically. I want them to be long enough so that they cover the entire model, or the entire base. So I'm just doing some test fits, see what kind of space we're looking at, how many I'm going to need, how much spacing I can get between the planks. And now I'm just going to take a little bit of masking tape and just cover that gap. Now this will probably be covered by wood as I put the planks on, but I find it'd be best practice to just cover that gap anyway. Even if I'm building up a model with like corkboard, I will still cover that gap so that I don't have to worry about accidentally seeing through it some point down the line after I've painted the model, because that really bothers me when I can see the table through the piece. Now I'm just going to put it together. Now I'm starting to glue some of the planks on. I'm just using Loctite Gel Control Super Glue. I really like this glue. It cures quickly, it's got a pretty good hold, and it's thick, so it won't run on you. It does have downsides for being thick, though. It is really easy to obscure details by putting too much glue on. But if you have really thin glue and you use that and it runs, then you're in the exact same boat. So I like the gel control. Use what glue you like best. So I'm staggering the boards a little bit, just like you would for a wood floor in a apartment or like a house or something, so that it looks nice and breaks up the monotony. I'm just doing some finer cuts with a Dremel tool. If you don't have a Dremel tool and would like to get good at modeling, I highly recommend you get one. Dremels just come in handy in all the places, in a lot of places you would never expect them to. I use mine for pinning, for basing, sometimes even for cleaning models. It really is a handy tool, and I got that specific one at Harbor Freight for $15. So it's not like they're breaking the bank. It's a pretty good little tool. I do think I want a new one though, as this one sometimes doesn't have enough torque to do what I want it to. especially when cutting something like metal pieces. It just takes forever. So just continuing with the staggering, leaving little gaps between the boards so that it looks kind of like not a perfectly sealed wood floor, kind of more like a rough wood floor. I used the clippers to start off with because I just wanted to get them down to the right size. I'm using the Dremel now because I want clean edges in the middle of the model. I don't want kind of the clipper pinch look that softwood gets when you cut it with wire cutters. So now I've just got this plank and I only need half of it to really fit. So I'm just going to hold it in place and score that depth that I want. And then just come back with that Dremel and just do a straight cut. And sometimes with these cutting wheels you have to move them back and forth a little bit, almost like you're shaking it a little just to be able to get the cut to move. Sometimes it just gets filled with sawdust or something and then it just kind of grinds into the sawdust and just dulls the blade instead of actually cutting. And honestly, these grinding wheels are just basically tough sandpaper. It's not like they actually have teeth on them to cut with. So I'm going to just glue that guy in place real quick and hit the base with some Instacure. If you've never used it before, it is a wonderful product for modeling because it makes super glue cure in about 3 seconds. Now be careful with it because if you have super glue on your fingers and accidentally hit them, the reaction that causes the Instaset to cure is it actually makes a whole lot of heat occur, so you can get burnt underneath the glue if you've got it on your fingers as it cures. So now that I've got all those planks in place, I need to trim them up. So to do so, I'm just going to take the Dremel back in and just kind of start getting rid of excess material. I could just leave it bigger, but I'm actually intend to use this model on the game table for my army, so I need it to be at least a close approximation of the same base size, which is why I'm keeping the Privateer Press base on there, so that it is still technically legal for, like, tournament play. Not that I play in very many tournaments, but you never know. So just slowly cutting through that material, kind of just rounding it off a little bit. Just making my way through. With Dremels, you gotta take your time. If you go fast, you'll break your wheels and then throw nice fragments of grinding wheel everywhere, and if you're not wearing eye protection, that can be your genuine hazard. So I'm still just cleaning up, getting rid of excess material. Now I'm just trying to smooth out a little bit to kind of make it nice and round. I very much want it to follow the same curvature of the base that's underneath, so that I can use the base as like reference points when I'm playing the game for like measurement and stuff. So I got it cut down and realized it looked kind of funny. I needed a little bit more wood to help round it out all the way. So I had this little scrap left over from when I cut out the end piece that I'm actually just going to put right on. And just add a little bit of glue. Stick in place. Give it a quick blast of the Instaset. And now it's ready for grinding. But I also want to do it on the other side. I had a bunch of toothpicks on my table like I always do, and so I just figured I'd use one of those. Just break off the ends, put a little glue, and stick her in place. Give it a quick blast with the Instaset. And now we're good for grinding. So I just needed to cut them down like I did the others, and then re-smooth the edges. And it ended up looking a lot better once I got that extra wood in place. It actually kind of looked round and not elliptical. Now I'm just going back and re-cutting some of the grooves. When I added those on, I didn't have enough spacing to leave the same kind of depth between the two that I did when I was putting the big ones in. I'm just kind of using my airbrush as a little bit of a cleaner to blow any sawdust out of the area. Not quite the airbrush's intended purpose, but hey, it works. I'm just making sure the edges are nice and clean like I want them to be. Grabbing any big pieces that might be out of the way because I'm about to start gluing, so I don't want any of these wood fragments or splinters or sawdust to get in the glue I'm trying to glue ultrafine things like horns on. So the last thing I want to do is get it all glued up and see that I've got a little bit of horn just kind of, or a little bit of a wood splinter sticking out of a horn. That would just be terrible. I'm just going to start with her body. Just, you know, take two of the biggest pieces and put them together, and then I can have something more solid to go from. Just testing the fit again on her arms, seeing how it would fit to see if I need to make any adjustments or if there's anything special with the posing I need to do to be able to ensure that her arm will rest naturally on that barrel as it does in the picture. Because if it doesn't, it'll just look weird. So I gave it the old test, it looked good. So I'm just pulling off the blue tack and gonna do some real fitting. So I'm scoring the inside of the part I'm going to glue. It ends up holding a lot better because it, on a really small level, it gives it a rough groove for the glue to be able to grip in as opposed to the smooth surface of the mold. And normally I do that scoring on both sides of what I'm gluing so that it holds better, but I didn't want to score the barrels and then move the model so that the score points would be exposed. So I just decided I would sacrifice a little bit of the grip for a clean look. Which isn't terrible. I mean, the super glue is going to hold pretty good. There's that missing rivet I was telling you about earlier that they didn't sculpt in so that it would fit cleaner. Yeah, this is a really great sculpt and a really great mold. This is going to be a lot of fun to paint. So now I'm just applying some glue. I had to do this twice. The first time I wasn't quite liberal enough with my glue, so I had to go back and re-glue it because it just wasn't holding. So I'm trying to just get it to hold now. Doing the old press and it's sliding, and you know, I'm mashing two smooth surfaces against each other. Decided I'd go with a little more heavy-duty glue. I mean, I'm gluing the two biggest parts on the model, right? I don't know why I didn't start with heavy-duty glue. Or I should say a heavy-duty volume of glue. I'm still using the same Loctite gel control glue that I always use. And it's still having some problems. So I'm just going to cheat and hit it with the Insta-Secure. And wow, it suddenly holds. It's a miracle. So now I want her legs in place so that I can figure out this tripod stance she's got going on, and so that I can glue the rest of her parts on and have kind of a firm base foundation to go from. So I'm just going to score the inside of her removed knees. And I'm just scoring with a dental pick. The pewter models, or whatever the white metal mix is soft enough that you can just get it with a steel dental pick, and you can get those at Harbor Freight or, you know, any craft store probably for, you know, $10 maybe for a set of 12. So I'm just going to glue those in. And I held it till it started to stick, and then came in with a toothpick and cleaned up any extra super glue I could see that had squished out. Because the last thing you want to do is take a really nicely sculpted and molded model and have a big old gob of super glue that's dried in a place it shouldn't have. Hit it with the Insta-Set. Give it about 15 seconds or so to fully cure. Sometimes it takes a little bit to work its way in, and hey, we've got a model that stands up. So I was just testing my placement where on the base I wanted it to sit. I chose that corner because the model doesn't have any, the base doesn't have any activity there. You know, there's no splits in the wood, so I decided I'd put the barrels there so that it would cover up the lack of detail, almost. So I'm just cleaning up some mold lines. Weapons are usually the worst with mold lines just because they get so small and so fine points, and you've got to, you know, if you're pressing two pieces of a plastic mold together, a rubber mold, you've got to have some point to try and get a fine edge on these, like, fake swords. And so that's why your weapons or your spears, your smallest pieces on the model, tend to have your worst mold lines. Because they're just trying to get a lot of detail in a small area. So I'm going at it with an X-Acto knife and kind of doing some scraping and cutting and following up with this jewelry file to kind of help smooth out the lines. Usually with resin miniatures, you can just get away with just kind of scraping with the knife, but sometimes the pewter, the white metal models are a little stubborn. So I cleaned up the sword, and I'm just trying to figure out how it fully sits in there. So I kind of did some test fits, see how it would go, and thought I'd just kind of glue it and see what it did. But I got the glue in there and couldn't get the sword to settle. Not sure why, it didn't want to. So I hit it with the Insta-Set, and it wasn't in very well. It seemed loose, it didn't look quite right, it looked too far out, so I decided I'd rip it off and try again. Just cleaning out any super glue or any of the Insta-Cure that might still be left. I don't want to go and apply super glue to an area where I've got a bunch of Insta-Cure already waiting, because then it just hurries and glues and glues shut my nozzle, so I've got to cut it off. So I decided I'd just come back to the sword. I'm trying some other fittings, and it's not going cleanly. So now I found a couple of mold lines on the base, or on the thicker parts of the model, the core of the model, the body. And in my quest for mold lines, I also found a few pieces where super glue had come and squeezed out a little thick that I'd missed. So I'm just doing some cleanup. Just making the model look nice. If you put in this effort in the front end, you'll see it a lot better, or you'll see that effort come to fruition when you're painting. So switching out my blades, I needed a smaller, flatter blade to be able to scrape off the top of the barrel because it's indented, and I just couldn't do it with that straight edge blade I had. So I'm just checking her hands, her arms, looking for any mold lines. Usually they're on cuffs or hands or, I mean, you name it, small details, there's going to be mold lines. Not a whole lot. I mean, like I said before, this is a really good mold. Probably because this is the first run on the mold, so it's really clean. I mean, for all I know, I might have gotten some of the first models that came out on that mold. Now I'm trying to clean up a little bit of flashing I've got on the horns, and it's just not going well. The horns are so small, I just can't hold on to them. And I could have gripped them harder with the tweezers, but I didn't want to risk damaging them. They're such a fine detail, and honestly, they're what make a Satyxis a Satyxis. You know, for those that know the lore, if they don't have horns, they're lesser people, and the Pirate Queen Skarre is kind of the greatest of the Satyxis, so she should probably have horns that aren't damaged or missing. So now I'm going to put the arm in place. I'm just scoring both sides. Take a little bit of glue and hit it in the ball socket there, and just push the ball in. And just hold it in place where she's resting it gently on the barrels, so it looks nice and natural. Instead of doing a full spray, I decided to just kind of undo the top and pull the spray nozzle out and just use like the little hose to try and put some fluid there. I didn't want to get a whole bunch of the Instacure right where I was going to be gluing other things. So that works. It's a lot more precise. Sometimes I'll do that with a toothpick too, just kind of dip it down in to get a little bit and then apply that way. Now we got a nice natural looking arm. And so I'm going to do the other arm. I found a little bit of mold release agent, or not mold release, excuse me, Instacure. In kind of, she's got this little gap between her left arm and her side. So I just grabbed a Q-tip and just dabbed it up real quick. I'm not sure when it got there, probably when I was spraying her legs in place. So now I've got kind of another ball and socket joint. Just scoring the inside and the edges. Kind of doing my best to try and score this. It's not going to happen very well because it's so small. So I'm starting to put her arm on. I'm realizing it's not quite a clean fit, and I was trying to put the damn thing on upside down. I flipped it over, and lo and behold, it's a wonderful fit now. Just adding a little bit more of the Instacure to help hold that in place. And hey, it's time to do some horns. So I'm coming in and scoring the kind of the landing zone for the horns, I should say, in her forehead. The little holes they've bored for them. And I'm just trying to grab the damn horns. They're so small. And I just get these big fingers that it is a struggle. I'm just getting some glue on the horn to get it placed. Didn't quite get enough. It just wouldn't hold. So I added a little bit more. I probably added too much. I accidentally got some on her face that I had to clean up. It kind of obscured one of her left eye. And so I had to come in with the dental pick and kind of a magnifying glass and see if I could find the edge of it and scrape it out. I did end up getting it, but just be careful when you're gluing around areas like that. So then I'm just adjusting the positioning of the horns, trying to make sure they look natural. Got a little bit off-center flex out to them. And she's kind of got her head tilted a little bit, so just making sure it all looks good. Then just getting the other horn, doing the same thing. These things are always much easier the second time. Go figure. And just doing some opposing adjustments and glue dabbing while I wait for the glue to dry on the horns. And now it's time for the sword. It's the only part I've got left. So I got a little groove there, and I found a mold line while I was going, so I just removed it real quick. I've got a little groove in the back of the barrel there that her kind of haft goes into. So I did some test fitting, and I kind of held it and tried to... Right now I'm consulting the picture on the website of how it looks so that I can make sure I don't get the spacing too weird or anything. Just doing more test fits, this time with some blue tack so that I can see if it's going to hold properly, or maybe I have the sword just kind of poking in wrong so it's not quite grabbing the way it should. Checking the 3-prong stance to see if it fits right. Decided I was pretty content with that and I could duplicate it, so I applied some glue and give it the old stick. Kind of just posing it out real quick. Alright, got ourselves a sword glued on. So I'm just cleaning up in the edges, and I found a piece of that dried super glue I was talking about earlier, right on the inside of that haft. So I'm just trying to flick it out, put a little pressure behind it so it pops and flies. I missed it when I pulled the sword off the first time. So now I'm just kind of cleaning up the base a little bit more. As I looked at it more and more, I was a little unhappy with it, especially with how that the toothpick was looking. I wanted it to be squared off like a board, and it was slightly round, so I kind of sanded it a little bit so it would square up. And now I'm just making sure that these lines will be defined enough that when we get primer on and a little bit of paint, it won't just be obscured. I really want to make sure you can still see that they're separate boards. So just cleaning them up with the various tools, dental picks, X-Acto knife, little jewelry file. Just want to make sure I still have that nice floor definition. And now I'm just scoring the floorboards. So I'm going to lose a lot of this wood grain texture when I prime and paint. So I wanted to still have some depth to look like a worn floor when I like wash the floor later. So I just did some scratching with the dental pick to kind of help give that kind of like a little bit of a wear to it. And I decided that the front edge there was just it hung out too far over the base. So I shortened it, cleaned it up a little bit, removed any weird edges, and made sure I hadn't plugged any of the separating gaps. Just helping to smooth it out a little bit with the pick, or with the, the jewelry file. And now it's time for Skarre to go to her base. So I'm brushing out any new sawdust that might have occurred or might have shown up with the airbrush, and picking my final pose for her, exactly where on the base I want. Then applying some glue. Her primary contact point is the barrels. It's the biggest point, so I put a lot of glue there, and I'm just kind of getting the edges that squished out. I put some on her feet as well, but I don't think they'd held quite as well. I'm just going to give one last blast of Insta-Set, and that pretty much does it for the assembly portion. I'll be priming this model and then painting it in the next episode. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. If you have any questions or comments about anything I did in this video, feel free to write them in the comments below and I'll get to them as soon as I see them. Until next time, happy painting!